All right, we're at the BTR Product Development Center. We're in the Spintron lab. Nick, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing today?
Today we have a Gen 5 engine on the Spintron. It's a LT4 headed engine, so it's got LT4 intake valves, stock exhaust valves. It's got one of our new camshafts in there that we did all the load development in-house. It's got a Johnson ST2126 LSR lifter, our SP010 hydraulic roller spring, our retainers, locks, locators, and a set of push rods. And James did the lobe development. He can tell you a little bit about that.
James, lobe development. Fill me in. What does that mean? What does lobe development mean?
Lobe development means the profile of the lobe, the acceleration rates, velocity, bounce. So basically what we've done is we've got a lot of pre-existing data for the LT platform. We spent a lot of time developing. So we kind of expanded on that and wanted to design a camshaft that could possibly be capable of 10,000 RPM in a turbo application, this cam specifically. So I guess we'll find out here shortly if we can make this thing live at 10,000 RPMs.
All right, and Ty, you are the man pushing buttons?
Yeah, I'm really good at pressing the go button.
Good. Yeah. And what is your strategy for bringing it up to 10,000 RPM? Is there, like you wait a certain RPM range before you accelerate? What do you do?
So we've got the program set up to do an automatic step test. What that means is it will come up to a certain RPM and collect data points. And then once it collects the data points, it will move on to the next RPM. We're doing 1,000 RPM increments from essentially 2,000 RPM to 8,000 RPM, and then from 8,000 to 10,000 in 100 RPM increments. So it won't sound like a traditional engine revving up through in a smooth fashion. It'll be more of a stepped type sound. It sounds really weird, actually.
Cool. Alrighty, and you'll fill us in on what you're looking for on this machine too when we're all ready, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good, because this looks very daunting.
Just some lines and grids and graphs and numbers, and that's all really.
James! All right, James Short standing here. James, can you do me a favor? Give me like a 10 to 15 to 20 second recap on what a Spintron is, what it's testing, how it operates.
Yep, it is literally a device that spins valve train components through this mock-up block that we've got that measures valve motion and gives us all the information we need on designing camshaft and valve train components.
Thank you so much for that, sir. One thing Ty said is that these engines, even on a Spintron, it's not running the engine. There's no combustion happening, but it's still very loud. So I'm going to have him fire this thing up so we can kind of get an earful. And then, James, why don't you shut the door once it starts to crank up, because I have tender ears.
Right.
All right, here we go.
What'd you just say, Nick? Come on, man. You just explained something off camera. What would you explain?
Oh, I say most of the engine noise you hear when a vehicle is running is actually the valve train noise. It makes a whole lot of noise. So.
That clickety clackety? All right. All right, so this is the data that the Spintron will spit out. You have a couple lines that are different colors that overlay. In the top corner, you can see the baseline RPM of 1500 and 10,000 RPM, max RPM. I have Nick Evdos here. Nick, can you do me a favor and explain what exactly I'm looking at here?
So the blue line is our baseline trace, like Logan said, at 1500 RPM. The red line is basically what the machine or the Spintron trace at 10,000 RPM. We have a slight bit of opening deflection, a little bit of loft here over the nose, and we have about 5 thousandths closing bounce. We shoot for about 6 thousandths closing bounce on a production cam for a street car. So to have 5 thousandths at 10,000 RPM with the hydraulic roller is exceptional.
And what is closing bounce specifically? What are you explaining there?
So basically when the valve closes, instead of the valve closing and staying shut, it actually bounces off the valve seat momentarily, and that leads to hurt lifters, hurt camshafts, loss of compression, loss of power, etc.
So seeing minimal bounce right there is important to your design process.
That is one of the most important things we look at when we design a camshaft. We could show you some competitors' camshafts that have 10 times that much valve bounce on a street car.
Okay, so this is a competitor's camshaft as described earlier. You can see the overlay, and this is what Nick was just alluding to, that bounce. Nick, why don't you explain what's happening right there on this camshaft?
So basically this camshaft was run up to 7,500 RPM, as you can see on the trace, and you can see it's got same minimal opening deflection, but the way the loft is over the nose, it exhibits way more loft, and where the lifter would be setting down on the closing side, you can see where it's out of control. It's bouncing off the edge of the lobe, coming down and exhibiting almost 40 thousandths valve bounce. Parts like these will hurt parts in an engine. This will destroy lifter wheels, axles, put divots in camshafts. I mean, we've seen it knock seats out of cylinder heads. It is just what you don't want to see.
A lot of people would say, you guys are just picking Lobes out of a catalog. And that got so old to listen to. And instead of continuing to pick Lobes from catalogs, they decided to build an entire R&D section and design their Lobes themselves. And that's what we're about to look at with James Short, is on his computer, some of the Lobe designs that they have been knocking out to create what you just saw on the Spintron. All right, what you're looking at here is not the bridge on the Starship Enterprise. This is a few Excel spreadsheets and different utensils that James uses to design Lobes here in-house. Yep. James, why don't you do me a favor? Can you walk me through what I'm looking at? We got a giant group of yellow cells, green cells, blue cells. What am I looking at?
Yep, so I use this spreadsheet to display our cam lobes that we've designed and compare them. So we've got different lobe designs that we try on the Spintron for stability, bounce, and acceleration, etc. And this is a spreadsheet that I use to compare those lobes and sometimes design some of the lobes. And, you know, I've got some other calculators in the background. So what we're doing here, this graph here is the actual graphical representation of the actual lobe. This is a velocity curve, and this is our acceleration curve. Now we'll dial in these peak accelerations in the actual acceleration profile based on Spintron data, because we're obviously looking for stability, low bounce, the least amount of deflection. That way, you know, the valve motion is exactly what you all are buying to put in your car.
The purpose of this test was to test our new BTR designed in-house Lobes. We also wanted to see how they reacted with our valve train components. We've had many customers that run their engines up past 9,000 RPM, and we wanted to see what they look like up there and make sure we give people the best product we can.
This test was pretty successful. We tested our fast lobe and slow lobe, and I think our fast lobe is actually probably what we're going to go with because it was actually stable.
James is referring to the acceleration rate of the lobe. As you accelerate the lobe faster, if you get too fast and you get out of control and the lifter loses, you always want the lifter to follow the cam lobe, and if you get too fast, the lifter usually over the nose of the cam will loft the lifter or it'll crash per se. So we want to make sure that we don't get any kind of too much deflection, too much valve bounce on valve close, and we just want everything to be happy at high RPM, and this motor saw some high RPM, we can tell you that much.
An unstable cam lobe will kill lifters, it'll bend push rods, it can break rocker arms, it can break valve springs. Pretty much any component in the valve train can break if the valve train is unstable. So we really want to dial in, you know, the lobe profiles so that you don't have any induced bounce and excessive deflection.
Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate you. I look forward to people benefiting from these clips.